Good evening, everybody. You are tuning in to the regularly scheduled Board of Finance meeting for August 2020. If you would join me in a Pledge of Allegiance followed by a moment of silence, that would be great. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and to the
and to the
republic
republic
for
which it stands,
one
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Just a point of introductions this evening. On this meeting are the Board of Finance. I'm Lainey McHugh, the chairman, Paul Timpanelli, the vice chair, Board of Finance members, Marty Isaac, Michael Barker, Elaine Hammers, Stephen Choi, and our alternates, Mark Mascola, Christine L. Iris, and Vin DiGennaro. Our town treasurer, Anthony Musto, First Selectman Vicky Tesoro, Chief Administrative Officer Kathleen McGannon, our town attorney Dan Shopek, our Board of Education Business Office Representative Peg Brindisi, Board of Education Chair Lucinda Timpanelli, Board of Education members Scott Kerr, Marie Petiti, and Tim Gallo, and Golf Commissioner Joe Gaudiano. If I missed anybody, I'll make those introductions as you pop up on my screen. So hopefully we won't miss anybody on that. Just a reminder to everybody, if you could remember to use the raise hand buttons because I can't always see everybody on the screen. And would you kindly introduce yourself each and every time that you speak so that Dan Shopek doesn't have to yell at me later. So we will work our way through the agenda tonight, which is pretty short. And we'll start with any public comment. I see that there are 5 non-video participants and I'm looking for attendees now. I see Peter Sullivan is on the call and I don't know who JK is, but welcome and thank you for joining us. I don't see anybody for public comments. Bill, am I missing anyone?
No, it doesn't appear to be.
Okay, so we will move on from public comments to the treasurer's report. Anthony?
Hello, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Zoom. The treasurer's report was in the agenda. I believe everybody had a chance to take a look at least the Board of Finance members, people who got the agenda. Pretty common report. Obviously, the challenges we're facing right now are the interest rates that are significantly lower than they were throughout the last year, mostly due to the downturn in the economy. The banks are paying significantly less than they were. A lot of the investments are holding up. The problem we're having with the investments is it's tough to reinvest because all the rates are down for reinvestment purposes. But other than that, looks like we've got the taxes have been coming in. Well, this is for the month of July, so it looks like tax have been coming in, which is good. I'm defer to the tax collector, maybe Maria, on the extent of that. But pretty much standard report, first of the year, and it's where we are.
Okay, Paul? Hang on, Paul.
Paul, you're on mute.
I'm unmuting.
Oh.
Go
There
on
you go.
mute. Can you address the question of the cash balance at the end as compared to the end of July?
I'm sorry, say again, the cash balance at the end of July?
Cash in hand at the end of June as compared to the end of July?
Oh, well, I would have to look at the prior report for that, which I guess I can pull up. I don't know if anybody, I'm not going to share the screen.
I don't think that's what he means.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think if you look at our report, I think he's talking about that's a year over year.
Right.
July 19 versus July 20. I think that's what Paul means.
Yeah, correct.
Oh, that's not part of my report. I'm not sure where that comes from. I think that's added afterwards. My report ends at the year-to-date interest amounts. And that changes to second year, third year, et cetera.
Anthony, can you take a look at those numbers and send an email afterwards, just what the discrepancy would be after you get a chance to take a look at it?
Sure, you just want the report from last year at the same time, Paul?
Yeah, Yeah, that'd be fine. I'm interested to know the difference between cash balances during the period of COVID as compared to last year during the period of non-COVID.
Okay,
Lane,
sure.
Yep.
I think Maria can probably address it. It's the fact that we are down 21,800,000 in revenue because we did not require them to be paid in July. We have extended everyone till October.
Right, but I think it's more than just the revenue for taxes. I think it has to do with the rates at which that things are coming in as well, right? Maria, we had talked about doing revenue runs quarterly to see year to date where we were as we expected. I think Marty and Michael had asked for that. So maybe that will help us look at that as well. And I see that you have your hand raised, Maria.
Yeah, I do. This is Maria Pires, Director of Finance. I did take a look at this report because I was concerned about the property taxes. And as we discussed a while ago, the town approved the deferment program. So the July 1st payments are not due till October 1st. So as of right now, I could see that the difference between last July and this July, assuming everything the same because the mill rate was the same, there's about $8 million less this July, because obviously they're not due till October 1st. The other difference has to do with the fact that we spent funds, capital projects funds that were not bonded till just today, actually. So there's like approximately $18 million that was bonded today, which, by the way, we got a really good rate, which was 1.534755.
Wow.
That was a really good rate. Our lowest rate since a long time. The last lowest rate was 2019, and that was 1.96. So that is the change. We do have to pay a band payment to, I believe it's the 28, and that's approximately $8.7 million. And that's part of the reason there's a borrowing of 18 million, because we're paying the old notes and permanent borrowing them, and then the additional amount is for projects that have already been completed. So that is the majority, that is the difference in the 21 million, approximately.
Okay. Does anybody else have a question about that? Marty?
Maria, thank you for that. This is Marty Isaac. Thank you for that. It would be helpful as we're going forward if you could include maybe even just a one-pager just showing how the balance is moving. I hadn't thought of the bond right then, so it would be helpful, number one. And number two, just a comment on the amount of money that's going to come in. I mean, obviously, the interest rate is different, but if we have less money as well, so there will be two factors that will contribute to lower interest accumulating during the course of the year. The interest rate, so it's kind of a rate and a volume variance. So it would be helpful, Maria, if you could keep us abreast of the volume variance. Anthony's keeping us abreast of the interest rate variance. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. If there's no other comment on the treasurer's report, we'll move on. We have two small transfers, year-end transfers to take care of. Mr. Timpanelli?
Yes, the first transfer is 8-20-01, transfer of $13,000 from two police accounts from the last year's fiscal year budget, training and professional development, to 5 varied accounts, $13,000 to be transferred into. You want me to read all those numbers, Madam Chairman?
Dan, do we need to read all of the numbers?
Dan?
I was muted, I'm sorry. No, it's not. I think it's in your call there, and it'll be in your minutes. So
I don't need to read all those. No.
Oh, okay. Can I have a second? Mr. Barker, thank you. So just so everybody knows, there was a question as to why there was a significant amount of money left in the training account. Chief Lombardo sent an email confirming that account starts with $160,000. And when things were shut down due to COVID, all training at the state level stopped. So there was money in that account. So we'll just be making a transfer to close out their year end, moving money within there. Are there any questions on this? Okay, so if there are no questions, I'm going to ask Phyllis to do a roll call vote because I can't see everyone on the screen. Phyllis, do you mind? Hold on, Phyllis.
I'm muted.
We got to unmute you, Phyllis.
Still muted.
Trying.
Not working?
Here she is.
Am I here?
Now we are there.
All right, sorry about that. I'll be happy to call the vote. Give me just a second. Oh, where am I?
The motion on the floor is to make a transfer from the police accounts for training and professional development to salaries, communication, professional development, association dues, professional development in service, and transportation vehicle repair. The total amount of the transfers is $13,000, $10,000 coming from training, $3,000 coming from professional development. The $10,000 is moving to salaries overtime, and then $50 to communications in public relations, $250 to their professional development association dues, $300 to professional development in service, and transportation vehicle repair for $2,400, which totals the $13,000. We're all set, Phyllis.
Okay. Elaine Hammers?
Yes.
Okay. Paul Timpanelli?
Yes.
Laney McHugh?
Yes?
Marty Isaac?
Yes.
Michael Barker?
Yes.
And I'm missing someone. Who am I missing?
Steve? Troy?
Mr. Troy.
Steve, okay, sorry.
It's a yes.
All right, very good. That motion passes 6-0. And our second transfer,
Item 8-20-02. I'm sorry, am I muted again?
no, you're open, you're good.
8-20-02 is to transfer $1,638 from the salary seasonal golf course to salaries account on the golf course to provide for the director of operations 0.25 salary increase to match non-union rate increases.
Okay, very good. Are there any questions? Second on this?
Second.
Michael? Maria, did you have something?
Yes, I do. I just noticed there's a typo on the account number.
Yes?
The two accounts should be 501101, full-time permanent.
Yep. Okay, so we're moving from the 501-103 to the 501-101 account?
That's correct.
Okay, and the total is $1,638. Joe Gaudiano, one of our golf commissioners, is on the call. Does anybody have any questions for Joe about this? It's pretty self-explanatory. I don't think I'm missing anybody's hands. Maria, you're all set?
I just noticed the amount was $10 off. I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters.
We're okay, or do you need to make that adjustment now?
I think we should be fine.
Okay. Any other questions? Elaine?
Yeah, Michael, once we're done on this vote, could we get a sense of where the golf course is now that they had to open late?
Yeah. Do you want me to fill you in now, or do you want to vote first?
We can, whatever Laney wants, we could vote on the motion just before you leave. It would be nice to have.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's close out the transfer before we forget, and then we'll go back to that question.
Thank you.
Phyllis?
I'm all set. Elaine Hammers,
Yes.
Paul Timpanelli,
Yes.
Laney McHugh,
Yes?
Maria Isaac,
Yes.
Michael Barker,
Yes.
Steve Church.
Yes.
That motion passes 6-0. Joe, do you want to touch base where you are as far as revenue and stuff from the golf course?
Yeah, absolutely. So we closed for 50 days, March 15th through May 5th. Our loss during that time was about $180,000. Luckily, we had a very good June and July. June, we made $70,000 extra over the 5-year average, and July, we increased $47,000 over the 5-year average. So we're up $117,000, so about a $60,000 loss. So that being said, August, because of all the rain and hurricane that we had, we're currently 32,000 off our August number. So hopefully we'll break even.
And is this about where you expected, given COVID?
More or less, yeah. There is one pending issue, and that was at the Golf Commission meeting, we voted to forgive 50 days rent to our vendor, Graylor, because he was obviously closed. We sent something to the Board of Finance. However, we're not really sure how to go about it moving forward,
Okay.
as the contract is with the town.
Maria, did that come to your office? Yeah.
I'll re-forward you the email, Maria.
I don't recall seeing it to go to the Board of Finance.
Well, it went to you on, hold on a second here. I can resend it to you, Maria.
That's fine. Phyllis, if you would just send it out to everyone to take a look at it. Do you anticipate there'll be further issue with that?
No, he was very straightforward of saying that usually he does a lot of weddings and parties and everything, and because of all the COVID restrictions, he was unable to make most of his money this year. So he came to us and said, you know, I'm trying to be reasonable. I'm trying to find middle ground here. For those 50 days that the state had me closed, would you mind forgiving my rent? Which we discussed at length and came to the agreement that, you know, it was the best interest in our relationship moving forward with him to forgive at least our portion of the rent. And I don't know how we go about having the town forgive or to have that discussion, his portion of the rent.
Paul?
Yes, thank you. Paul Timpanelli. Joe, you may not have this in front of you. If you don't, I understand. Do you have an idea as to the year-over-year difference between June and July of 2020 as compared to June and July of 2019 in terms of gross revenue?
Just 1 second, let me pull that up. Okay, so total income for, I'll go back May, June, July. May 5-year rolling average was $293,000. 2020 was $281,000. Keep in mind we're closed. We didn't open until May 5th. June rolling average was $334,000. 2020 we finished with $413,000. And July rolling 5-year average was $344,000. 2020 we closed with $380,000. So the course is being utilized to a huge extent, which is great. You know, the employees are doing a great job sanitizing the golf carts and making sure social distancing is taking place. You know, I think it's a big relief to the residents of the town that they have some options to get out there and exercise. And
your staff is doing a fabulous job.
Thank you.
Excellent. Any further questions for Joe?
No, thank you for the update.
Absolutely.
Okay. Excellent. Then I'd like to move on to our discussion items. I'd like to introduce Peg Brindisi, who's on the call from the Board of Education Finance Department. I also see that Tom McCarthy, our Human Resource Director, has joined us as well. So hi, everybody. Peg, can you hear me? I gotta unmute Peg.
Hi, Lainey, can you hear me?
I can. So on the call tonight, we have our Board of Education Chair, Lucinda Timpanelli, and our Board of Education members. We're glad to have you join us this evening. Peg is going to walk us through where they ended. I'm going to ask that we do the year-end 2020 projected surplus and legacy account information first. That information went out to the Board of Finance by email. It should be also, I know it went out by email. I'm not sure if it was in the actual packet. Hey, can you just walk us through a little bit where we wound up with the surplus, where it was coming from and where we're applying it?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So we had a $178,819.11 surplus, and that was applied to our interdistrict account in our special revenue fund to reduce the deficit, bringing it in at a deficit of $55,000. Leaving the Board of Ed account with a zero balance available for the fiscal year end 1920. Okay. So do you have any questions about the move?
Nope, I don't have any questions. Does anybody else have a questions? Elaine? Hang on, Elaine, you're muted.
Yep, I unmuted. Lainey, I have up the email that you sent us. It says Board of Education General Fund results 1920.
Mm-hmm.
So is this the paper, Peg, that you're working off of? Because I didn't get anything else but that, unless I've missed something. There was nothing else in the agenda package.
No, that was the Peg, she's talking about the chart that Al Cameron prepared and sent that we looked at.
Yeah, actually, Lainey, I have your copy here in front of me.
Okay.
Are you working off that, Peg?
Actually, no, this is something Al Cameron prepared.
Okay.
But I can answer pretty much what he's put here. Do you have any questions about it?
Well, I'm going to ask a silly question to begin with. Can you explain what you are calling a legacy account? Because I've not heard that used before.
Okay. There are accounts that are, some of them being in the special revenue fund. Those funds act like small businesses. And some of those accounts have deficits. And maybe year to year, you could say. And we were cleaning them up, which is what we did with that $178,000 coming out of the board and bringing it in to the special revenue interdistrict account. So a legacy account is a deficit that's been carried year to year.
Okay, so I'm sorry, that probably confuses me more because I was under the impression that the Board of Ed couldn't carry any type of fund over year other than when we set up the self-pay medical system where you had to be able to carry a balance to pay claims that were open and unreported. So you're saying there are other types of funds that are similar to that?
Yeah, special revenue funds are, again, small businesses. They're called enterprise funds, and they act like a small business. So if they have a surplus, such as, say, driver's ed, they're saving to buy a car, they'll have a surplus, and maybe they won't buy it in 1920, but they'll plan on buying it in 2021. So they will be saving their funds, and with that surplus, they'll go and buy the car. Now, some of the other accounts we're running with deficits.
And is there somewhere where there's a list of what we consider legacy accounts on the Board of Ed side? Which are kind of like the special accounts, special revenue accounts we have on the town side.
Yeah, if you were to take a look at the Board of Education financials, every month they're approved, that could show you in the special revenue BOE programs report which ones end with the deficit, and then you could see year to year if they would be considered legacy accounts.
Peg, Marty, before I let you ask your question, Peg, is it possible for you to send the board a copy of the other schedule that shows those accounts broken out?
Sure.
Okay, so if you could email that to either Maria or Phyllis, and then I can send that. I was under the impression we would be able to share it tonight.
Last night, everything got emailed to you guys? Did you see that email with the special revenue?
I'm looking.
Last night with the bank balance sheet reconciliation, the 205, which was the special revenue, and then the food service.
Peg, I don't see any of that in the email.
Maria, did you get it? It was an attachment.
I'm checking, but if you sent it to me, I don't believe it's set to send it out. So let me double check.
Yeah, well, but I had Lainey and Marty. Marty, did you see it?
I did not. Can I just for clarification though, I wanted to just help Elaine, as I've spent some time with Ralph and Al earlier in the year, and what I walked away with is there's a differentiation between the operational budget and their enterprise funds. They tend to use the legacy account descriptor for two groups of funds. Their special agency account, and they bulk them together. There's probably 25 accounts or so that go into this group of special agency accounts. And with this transfer at the end of the year, in total, those special agency accounts are showing a surplus. And then in addition to that, the other legacy account that, which also runs in essence as an enterprise account, is their luncheon account. And if you recall earlier in the year, that was in deficit and it remains in deficit. So I share your question in terms of I'm puzzled as well, how that manages year over year. I don't fully understand that at this point either. But when they talk about legacy accounts, I consider that they have kind of two buckets of legacy accounts. They have special agency that groups into one that my understanding is that's in surplus today, and the other legacy account of the lunch program, which was in deficit and now is in a significantly higher deficit because they had been involved with the lunch program that they shared with the community that I'm sure we'll have a chance to talk about shortly.
Elaine, does that clear that up for you?
Well, it helps, and thank you, Marty. I think it helps. I think if I could see a list of them, I'd have a better understanding. I realize how the lunch program works, and I understand that some of the clubs have accounts because they're saving for trips or the band or whatever. But I get concerned, similar to us with the special agency accounts, where things start to proliferate and then we don't have a good handle on how much funds are there or what they're used for. Particularly understanding their legacy accounts. I guess the one question is, do the legacy accounts ever transfer to the operating account? And was this the situation where one of the accounts had, the medical account had a lot of money that was held from the employee or the retiree contributions that suddenly we realized was there and applied over to operations? So I'm trying to understand what these other funds are. I always get a little nervous when I don't see it directly in a budget.
Peg, can you speak to that?
Well, I could tell you that these accounts stand alone. They are not necessarily involved with the Board of Education. However, when I spoke about the $178,000 that was moved out of the board and over to interdistrict, that's an example of where we will help out because the salaries that are in, for example, preschool, are overrunning maybe the revenue, creating a deficit. So that 178,000 that you'll see on my special revenue report is what is being transferred out of the board to help an account that's in need.
Elaine, did that satisfy that question?
Well, I guess it leads another question. Are there other accounts that the board might transfer money over to help? Because to me, that one's a little bit of, a little gray, because I would think that some of the children that are in the preschool are there because they are requiring special services that are part of the education that we do pay for. While I know some people can go and pay tuition, I would think some of it is the board's responsibility, or the town, because we are covering children who we are trying to help with an issue. Did I make that
Right.
clear? I'm sorry if I wasn't.
Another example of where the board may have helped a special revenue account would be elementary strings. There were funds moved to the tune of $239,000 to assist with salaries.
Okay. All right. I think maybe when we see the list, it'll either be clearer or muddier and raise more questions.
As far as those accounts, what I want the takeaway to be tonight is we were looking to see what they were as far as in deficit. If they're able to use that surplus to reconcile those accounts, we're good with their legacy accounts in that column. Where we're still not sure is in the lunch accounts, what is related to COVID, what is COVID related expenses, what is true deficit there. I think that we'll have a better handle on that as we go. So that is our point for the update for that this evening. Vicki?
So, hi Peg. I just have a question, again, going back to the surplus of, I believe it's $178,819. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
And that was already applied to the inter-district account. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, we closed out the books for the board to available balance of 0.
So I'm going to have to either defer to Maria or Dan Chopik about this, because I'm not sure that you can do that without the Board of Finance approving the use of that surplus, of carrying it over. I know you're not carrying it over to the next fiscal year here, I guess, because you've already applied it to a deficit in an account. So I'm just not sure myself. So I don't know if Dan and Maria have something they want to say about that.
I just want to add one thing before they do. What we're taking into account here is when we're transferring funds, it's to handle salaries for these programs that might otherwise have been in the board.
Vicki, did that answer your question? You're muted, hold on.
Honest to goodness, I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I got a request from the superintendent to carry over the surplus, but basically there would be no surplus left now if in fact it's been applied to one of these special revenue accounts. So I'm just not, honestly not sure, so.
I have a question, Peg.
Yeah.
It's Lainey McHugh again. The special agency accounts are non-lapsing, so they carry year to year. So it wouldn't matter if they carried the surplus over and applied it to that versus their operating budget, Vicki? Or is the statute?
I think Dan wants to say something.
I think, let me, I'm not certain that I am following here. Are we saying that there's 170, I've heard so many different numbers about money that was left over. I've heard 178, I've heard that there's $500,000, I've heard that there's less than that, more than that. So This is the final answer, Peg?
Yes,
178,000. So there is no $500,000 number,
No, there's nothing available.
and there's no $500,000 contingency account.
No, not that. I mean, you might be talking about the 2021 budget.
I don't know what I'm talking about. That's what I say. I've heard so many different sets of numbers that I'm very confused. But
Yeah.
let's go back to this particular $178,000. You basically applied it to, it was money in the 1920 budget, and you applied it to
Salaries.
to salaries that were payable in that year's budget. Is that?
They were
Yes.
correct.
Is that
Payable, but they
used-
were paid out of a special revenue account.
So
Nine.
the deficit,
Are
so
you
the
gonna-
deficit was only, I'm sorry, the surplus was only in the special revenue account.
No, the
There is a-
surplus was in the operating budget
Okay,
that they wanted to apply to the special agency accounts.
but those are all, that, as of the end of last fiscal year, is that?
That's right.
Because I guess, and what I guess that Vicky was referring to, and I think there is a statute with regard to, and I think that was in Ralph's letter last week, asking to apply surplus or to reallocate the surplus back to the Board of Education for use in the coming year. But now I'm hearing that really that is not what you're asking for, that doesn't exist.
Yeah, it was used to right size an account for salaries.
Okay. Just quickly, I see a lot of hands. Michael, you were waiting? Maybe?
No, it was a long time ago. Don't worry about it. Thank you.
Okay. Paul?
Yes, Paul Timpanelli, just as a follow-up to Elaine's question, in addition to we being provided at some point an inventory of the so-called legacy accounts, can we also get included in that how these accounts are governed? Where's the authority allowed expenditures, and where does the authority lie with regard to transfers in and out?
Peg?
Yes, we can provide you that.
Okay. Marty?
Yeah, maybe this is a question for Maria. I just am a little unclear, or Dan, I don't understand this. If the lunch account is operating in deficit, is it permitted to operate in deficit across a fiscal year? I don't quite understand how that works, or how we true it up, or how it's dealt with. So if Maria and or Dan can clarify that for me, I'd appreciate that.
Dan cannot.
Well, I think that was the essence of my question.
Okay. You know, I think they're very valid questions. One of the things that I think as we have a new business administrator come in and they get set up, that, you know, as the Board of Education and the finance director get themselves set, I think those would be good things for them to reestablish, you know, what the controls are and how they're going to address it, so that there's not an issue moving forward.
Lainey, not even the controls, or maybe Lucinda, if you have anything you want to contribute with regard to that point now, that would be helpful too.
Well, I wasn't in on the interview. I wasn't in on the meetings with Al and Ralph, so I really don't want to say anything that might be misconstrued or wrong. So I'm just going to wait, and maybe we should just wait until Ralph comes on, or the new finance guy comes on, because I really don't want to say anything. I understand what Peg Brindisi's saying, but those are the only information I got was what I received that Peg gave me. So I'm not sure what you really want to know. I do know that legacy accounts have been in the district for years. And since we've never had deficits before in there, I guess it wasn't a question. And now that there are questions about that, I guess maybe we need to wait for Al or Ralph to address that.
Yeah, I think that that's, a good idea, and this is a good discussion for us to have. We've had those discussions about special agency accounts on the town side as well. So, Marty, did that satisfy your question at this time?
I'll hold for that. I would just, related to the luncheon account though, I was had the understanding that when we opened up the lunch program to the community and we didn't restrict it to those in need, it was made available to the entire community. It was my understanding that we were going to be receiving state aid for that. And while the Board of Ed is here, I just wanted to understand the status of that. Are we receiving state aid? What has to be done? Do you need assistance from the town to get compensated for that? Because it sounds like that's several $100,000.
Hi, Marty. Betty Cinco and I spoke this morning, and what she is getting during the COVID is a small amount of money from child nutrition programs. And that right now is receiving the only reimbursement would be from the child nutrition program. However, she will be filing in the second quarter, as well as she did in the first, for the FEMA funds.
Okay, I just would, as you can clarify that, because I think the communication that went out to the community was encouraging everybody to take advantage of these lunches, not just those in need. And I think that was occurring because it was the understanding that it was going to be, money was coming back from some source. Otherwise, I'm just kind of confused why we would have made that available to 100% of the community as opposed to those in need. So I'll leave that as an open question to understand. I'm confused by it, but I look forward to hearing more. So thank you.
Okay.
I think in follow-up to that, and then Elaine, I see your hand raised as well, and Dan, but in follow-up to that, I think that's one of the discussions that we'll all be following as far as COVID-related expenses is what, we're not necessarily sure what reimbursement's coming from where on either the town side or the Board of Education, and I think we need to be cognizant of what we need to be advocating for, such as, if we have reduced tuition for Tech Ec, and we were told that, we had to keep our employees whole, or the Board of Ed had to keep their employees whole, there should be some way to balance out, if we're not bringing in the revenue to pay them, how are we actually doing that? So that's part of the discussion I'd like to have as well. Elaine? Hang on, Elaine.
I'll unmute. I got it. I guess what I'm looking at the sheet that you sent out to us the other day, Lainey, and I'm trying to understand, Peg, when the Board of Ed receives its annual budget allocation from the town in a single line item called program expenses, and for round numbers, let's say we gave you $106 million. Were any of those funds intended, or originally did they include, because you keep talking about salaries at Tech Ed, in our original budget, were we funding salaries in Tech Ed?
There are salaries in the Board of Ed budget that apply to the preschool, and there are salaries that are allocated in the special revenue account that apply to preschool. So that it's on both sides.
It's on both sides. Okay, so this supplemental that we had to put over there, or surplus funds, that wasn't money that originally was budgeted to be paid by the town?
No, not if it's in the special revenue.
Okay. So then I guess I'm back to Dan's question. Can we, or Vicky's, can we really be using town funds into a special account that the Board of Ed didn't approve? I leave that for Dan to figure out and get back to us, but thank you for answering the question.
Dan and then Michael.
Yeah, I just to follow up with regard to these accounts, if maybe Lucinda, as the chairman of the board, when these expenditures are made, when money is taken from those accounts, or who's authorized to access those accounts?
That was the
The
question.
the superintendent usually approves all that.
So it's solely in the purview of the
Superintendent
superintendent.
and the business director. That's who
Does-
usually
does-
takes care of this.
And does
And
the
these
board
are-
get, does the
Yeah, I'm
board
sorry
get
that Al
monthly
couldn't be here.
reports?
I'm sorry Al couldn't be here too. He
No,
probably.
I understand, I understand Al's situation. Is it, but
Just
does,
for
does
1
the-
second, if you're not speaking, could you hit mute? There's some feedback. Bill, I'm not sure if you can hear it, but I'm having trouble with the audio hearing who's speaking. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dan.
so does the board get monthly reports on what money has been spent from those various accounts?
Lucinda or Peg?
I'm sorry, Dan, somebody was just at my door. Can you repeat that?
I said, does the board get monthly reports? What Lucinda said is that Ralph has the superintendent has the sole authority to access those accounts. And so my question is, does the Board of Education get reports on how those accounts are being expended on a regular basis, monthly, bi-monthly?
So that's definitely something Al could answer. I'm not in the Board of Finance committee meetings. So when the committee meets, I think all of that is discussed before any kind of move is made.
Is anybody present tonight on that finance committee?
Scott?
Occur?
Yeah, so I've been on the finance committee since I joined the board. And yes, the reports that we review regularly at the finance committee are the Board of Ed accounts, and then also and legacy accounts is a very unfortunate name. They're special accounts, right? They're outside of the board's budget, and it's usually because they receive revenue from sources like the elementary strings account. We charge tuition, we have a fee that we charge families to play an instrument, but that fee isn't enough to cover the cost of the program. So that's why that account is in the deficit. But yes, we do review those reports. But unfortunately, over the last several months with the budget, Al hasn't been able to provide them all completely for the last couple of months.
Okay. Does that satisfy the question as to, how those reports are being generated?
Yeah, well, I don't want to hog your meeting. It's really not my place, but what I'm hearing is that they're really and I understand obviously what's been going on with COVID, but what I hear is for the last several months, there has been no reporting to the Board of Education.
Okay. Does anybody else have a question or comment about where we are as far as this account? Michael? Can anybody else hear that feedback?
Yes,
Yeah. Bill, do we know what that is?
it's probably Lucinda or Peg since they're the only ones open.
Yeah, my guess is Dan.
Maybe Dan.
I also think it's.
In any case, Michael Barker, I am listening to this conversation with great interest because it's all very confusing. I would just request, in addition to the governance of any particular account and who can initiate payments from or withdrawals from or payments to an account, because it sounds to me like we have a situation where staff is having cash control over accounts that they may not should have. So I just want to see the whole thing in one place with that explicitly indicated, so that we can know what the process is for where the money goes, which I think everyone will know. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have any other question with that? We also have a discussion item open on update on COVID-related expenses for the town and the Board of Education. I sent an email to the Board of Finance with Ralph Izagna had sent survey. The state asked every district to prepare, to answer survey questions about anticipated expenses for COVID, and what the expenses would be to open under their hybrid model or reopen fully and all that. So those are estimated expenses for COVID-related changes that need to happen in order to provide, education. And I know that they're all for the safety and well-being of our staff and students, and that they are definitely things that we will need to do. I just wanted everybody to have a conversation, to be prepared, to understand, what we anticipate in reimbursement, what we will need to go to bat for reimbursement, and what we will need to find within our own budgets. So to start that discussion, I see Marty's hand is raised.
Yeah, I guess for me, what I'd really like the Board of Ed folks to address are, one, I understand the cost of, in the survey was asking for the cost to do it. What's unclear to me is what is the incremental cost and what are the incremental savings associated with COVID. So we approved the budget last year, and the number is the number. And as we're getting prepared to go back, and I understand these are absolutely extraordinary circumstances, but what's unclear to me at this point are of the costs that are going to be expended. Are these incremental costs to what we just approved in the budget, or are they not incremental cost and you're shifting money around, as you have every right to do? And I presume with COVID, given that things are changed so much, well, I imagine it's not as significant, but are there areas in the budget that will experience savings because we can't operate as we might normally? For example, sports. I don't know what the status is of sports, but so as you're explaining this, I think there are kind of three numbers that I'd like to better understand. What are the costs associated with getting us ready for COVID to bring the kids back and the teachers to keep everybody safe? Of those costs, what is incremental to what we had approved in the budget that we're spending more on? What is the savings that we're no longer doing, we're spending less on? What is the net impact that's happening? And then presuming that's a significant number, what were the plans for reimbursement?
As we do that, this is just for discussion purposes. So we understand that there are not, dollar for dollar answers for these questions. This is more in, where do we stand and what are we looking at moving forward? Elaine? Sorry, Elaine.
Stop coughing. I was looking at the sheet. It's a little hard to read because I think it just everything in a row. So I wanted to be sure I understood that we were saying, for example, that the contract for additional bus routes is $1.26 million. It's actually at the last item on the report. So for those of us who do not have children in the school system, so we have not totally followed what our reopening plan is. Can someone first tell me what that's going to be and what will create incremental costs?
Lucinda?
Hi, Elaine.
Hi.
I think that answer would be best delivered by Dawn Perkins regarding the buses.
Okay, but what are we doing? Are we sending half the kids in 2 days a week?
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand the process.
Elaine, I don't think that this discussion tonight is about what the reopening plan is. I believe that right now they're working on the hybrid model. And I believe that is a work in progress. So I'd like to keep this.
Okay, but the costs that they're giving us are connected to what the model is, or else the costs are pulled out of the air.
Those were the way the state asked the survey to be completed. So I don't have an actual answer to that.
Just to answer Elaine's question, it is a hybrid model. Kids will be going to school, I believe, anyone on the Board of Ed can correct me, 4 days out of the week. So there'd be a cohort going Monday and Tuesday and a cohort going Thursday and Friday. Kids will not be in the schools on Wednesday. They will be doing remote learning on Wednesday. So half will be in you know, it's all, you know, obviously to reduce the numbers in the school, to provide for adequate social distancing. So the kids will be traveling by bus on Monday and Tuesday and Thursday and Friday.
Right, but there will,
Go ahead, sorry.
so there'll only be half the kids on the buses each time. And one day a week, there will be no buses.
Right.
And yet we're projecting a $1.26 million increase.
Yeah, so again, Elaine, you're right. You're right as far as what you're saying. I don't know whether there are additional bus runs that are needed. That would be something that Dawn would have to answer as to, you know, why that is increased like that. But I think the problem here tonight, you know, we have Peg on the call, which is great that she's here. We don't have Al Cameron because he could not be here. So it's hard to answer these questions. So it might be better, rather than continuing this conversation, to either call for us another special meeting before school starts to get these questions answered that the Board of Finance has, and make sure that we have the people here to answer the questions.
Okay, I agree with you. And I guess because I see a lot of numbers in this report that look like they are additional expenses, to Marty's point, over and above what we have already approved. And so what I certainly would like a comfort level of understanding, and I am not questioning the model or whatever they decide to do, but I need to understand the costs associated with it. And can we expect some help from the state or federal funds, or are we looking at taking a whack at our fund balance, because we don't have that much left in there now?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And maybe Peg, it would be helpful for this group if you could, and I don't know if you can, I'm just going to ask you, if you can tonight, explain the possible places that reimbursement monies will be coming from, or could be coming from, including from FEMA, including from the state of Connecticut. There's a special, another grant program, I believe, that reimbursements have been applied to, and maybe Maria can chime into that as well. I think that perhaps that should be discussed tonight as far as the town expenses are concerned as well.
Hi, right now we have $127,000 that should be applied for the COVID expenses from a grant, the CARES Act grant. That should be coming through in a day or so, I hope, because we've applied for it. Ralph has signed off. Quarterly, we're doing the FEMA reimbursement. So we've got our expenses covered by a project code, so we can easily identify them. So we'll be applying in the second quarter. We've already applied in the first quarter for the FEMA, so we'll be going for the second, along with the school lunch program, and filing with Maria in the town on that. Ralph had gone over this with me this morning, and he understands the question that's being raised about where these funds are going to come from and incremental to our Board of Ed budget. And he said, the Board of Ed is monitoring the situation, but has no specific ideas of what to yet cut. And that is on the table, and he understands the concern.
Okay. I really want this to be a positive and a conversation, that we're all on the same page, that we're looking for to make sure that we're heading this off at the pass. You know, we really want to be a partner to the Board of Education and to the town to make sure that we are seeking reimbursement that we're entitled to, fighting for reimbursement that we should be entitled to, and that we're making sure that our kids and our staff are provided for the best possible. So that was the purpose of this discussion tonight. I know that Maria has been filing for the reimbursements as they come in. And I know that we have a significant amount of PPE and supplies that need to be in place for school to reopen safely. So that those are very important things that we want to make sure that we're doing. And I think that if we can have open dialogue and stay connected on these things, that we will be able to make sure that we are in touch with everybody we need to, so that funding comes in that's supposed to come in. Did that make sense? A couple nods. Maria and then Michael.
Maybe we can go over that schedule that I have in front of my financials, which talks about the FEMA expenses that we requested for reimbursement.
Are you able to screen share that so we can see?
I could try.
Yes, please. While you're trying to screen share, Michael.
Yeah, I only kept it up after you were talking, Lenny, because I agreed so wholeheartedly. I think we're having a bipartisan moment of confusion, and I would advocate wholeheartedly for the meeting that the first selectman suggested, some joint meeting before school starts, where we can get a real sense of what the amount of money is that's incremental, what's in the budget, so we can all start to really be on the same path. Because clearly right now, nobody has all the information. I think we're all entitled to it, and we should all have it.
Scott?
Yeah, I just want to comment, because I hope I can add just a little bit of clarity, not from my perspective as a Board of Ed member, but because for the districts that I work for, I was involved in preparing our response to that survey. So that survey, those numbers that you're looking at, was a request from the State Department of Education for us to provide our estimates of incremental expenses relative to our 2021 budget. And it is for the purposes of them to look statewide at where the greatest need is, right? And to figure out how they might allocate any additional funds that they're able to secure from the feds. So it really is it was an exploratory survey that they asked every district to reply to in the state, and that's what I believe we did. I wasn't involved in preparing those numbers, so I won't comment to, how they, what they represent. Like, we got to talk to Dawn about the specifics around the transportation, but that's what that survey was. I just wanted you guys to understand that.
Maria, are you ready to share that screen? Or you want me to let Marty go?
I'm still looking, sorry.
That's okay. Marty?
This is Marty Isaac. Scott, I want to thank you for that. So I guess what you're saying is what the survey represents, our planned opening would represent, millions of dollars of incremental expense. It's unclear today where reimbursement might come from. I guess, as Michael's saying, as everybody's saying, I think it's absolutely critical that we're communicating back and forth, because what would be incredibly unfortunate would be if a plan was put in place that was $5 million incremental dollars and we don't have the ability to manage that. If it turns out the state and federal does not come through, I think it's all the more critical that we are kept in the loop early, so we could jointly work with you and figure out some sort of solution and how we can manage this. So I'm very interested in having that type of dialogue, and thank you for clarifying, Scott.
You're welcome.
Lainey, do you want me to go through this?
Lainey, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yes, Maria, please go ahead.
Megan's pregnant.
So to address the question where how many different funding sources we have on the Town Southend Board of Ed, there's a FEMA grant that will supposedly reimburse 75%, and the state has called a CRF grant that the town can apply for, and that's anything that FEMA doesn't reimburse. The state is supposed to reimburse, you would think, 25% if everything is eligible with the FEMA. The Board of Ed has 2 grants additionally to the FEMA, which is the CARES grant that Peggy was brought up, and there's another one through the Department of Education. I'm not sure the name of it, So between all those three funding sources, the plan is that we get fully reimbursed. We did have some issues with the filing of this report, which was just filed last Friday. FEMA all of a sudden comes up with different eligibility requirements that they didn't tell us in day one. So we're still communicating with him. I know that because we were, especially Dan Martin in my office, made a point of addressing the fact that they never brought it up to our attention, and that escalated to the legislation to address the issue of the fact that we were not notified that certain things may not be eligible. So they're working on that. But this particular schedule has been filed with FEMA for reimbursement, which is a total of $366,000 between the town and Board of Ed. As you can see, the town has overtime, various materials that were purchased, building cleaning, gloves, emergency meals, postage, the morgue rental, EMS support, Zoom licenses, and then the Board of Ed has food service, other operations and facility cleaning and disinfecting. So the total is $366,000 that was just recently submitted to FEMA for reimbursement. Once that's approved, or if they deem that some are ineligible, we can apply for the state grant. As soon as this is done, I'm going to take this file and apply for the state CRF. They will not take this request until FEMA reviews it. So the filing deadline, I believe, is September 30th for the CRF. So hopefully by then, FEMA will have reviewed these expenses and determine which ones are eligible. And we will definitely pursue the eligibility with the officials to make sure that we get reimbursed for every dollar.
Maria, I have a question for you. It's Lainey again. On their morgue rental?
Yes, believe it or not, we did have to rent a freezer trailer. There was no room in the hospitals and also at some of the funeral homes. And it was used, unfortunately.
Lainey, I'm not sure if you can see, I don't know how to.
Yeah, I can see you. Marty?
So what's a little confusing to me is it's hard to understand what costs are in here versus costs that were other costs that were experienced. For example, it appears that this says BOE food services $86,000. I think, you know, the lunch, as we were talking about before, that lunch account is in deficit by maybe $600,000 at this point. And a good chunk of that, I was led to understand, was related to COVID. If we're only getting 86, you know, and this is, I think it ended at the end of June. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm unclear what's being requested here as compared to all COVID expenditures. I'm not asking to go through it now. My point is, I have a great deal of confusion between what we're requesting to get grants for versus costs that have been experienced. And I think as we look forward, you know, if these millions of dollars of incremental costs that that were on that survey, that for moving forward, and I understand we're going to apply for grants. I think what's going to be very helpful for all of us to understand is what percentage of this is potentially covered by grant. So it's great that we're going to get 366,000. It's, you know, my sense is we've spent a lot more than this. And so we can't solve it tonight, but I think that's the ask, is to really have all of us around the table to really understand this in much more detail.
Well, let me address this schedule. This schedule on the town side, we actually segregated all the expenses related to COVID and our request and reimbursement. These are strictly related to that event. The Board of Ed provided us with these numbers. And keep in mind, this is only up to June 30th. We can submit up to December 31st. So any expenses from July 1st to December 31st, we will be requesting additional funding for that. We
Okay.
have to file quarterly.
This is Marty Isaac again. And I completely understand on the town side, that makes perfect sense. And I understand how you went about the incremental. It's on the other side that I'm just very confused. And if we did spend this incremental money on the food service, I just want to make sure that we're able to get that back. But I'll table it for the future discussion. Thank you.
I think I'd like to rephrase that, Maria. I think what our concern is not that it's just, which side it's on, but that any of the things that we are expending that doesn't fit into this actual grant, that we should be able to advocate for reimbursement from any source that we can find. And we need to be able to keep track of that. So,
Like I said, this is all related to COVID. As it is, they're asking for a lot more information than they initially requested just to have an expense eligible. Initially, they didn't ask to find out how many gloves were in the bag. They didn't ask how many masks. So the last day that we were requesting reimbursement, they're asking for that information. Had we known that, we wouldn't have to go back and research all that information back to every invoice, every box. And we let them know. Dan Martin was on top of that. Every week they have a planning meeting.
Yeah.
And he was really pretty upset with the fact that, and so was I, that they never told us day one that they needed that additional information. So every day there's something new that they come up with that they didn't tell us ahead of time.
I think one of the things that concerns me, there's only a certain pool of money that they have to apply to these things, and that they talk about, based on need, where that money's going to go. And what's to say Trumbull needs it any less than another town? How are they deciding who's in need based on, nobody has accounted for these possible expenses. This is all new territory across the board. And I think that's one of the big concerns. So it's not just the Board of Ed, it's not, it is the town. And I think we need to be able to advocate for that. So I think that was more the purpose of this discussion. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong.
Also, keep in mind the Board of Ed expenses are on the Board of Ed side. So
yes.
We requested that information and that's what we were provided. We were provided with a documentation that totals that amount, but we have no knowledge if there are any other expenses there.
Yeah. I know that every day is a new regulation and a new request for information. I work in healthcare. Let me tell you how confusing it is. Everything from whether or not we're eligible to provide services by telehealth or not by telehealth and all that. And every day the rules change. I could show you the email change just on how I'm supposed to document things based on, who the provider is and who allows what. So this is challenging in all areas. I think that this is a good exercise for us to have this discussion and for us to, work in partnership from board to board to make sure. I do understand that the Board of Education is a separate, has their allocation, and we can't do that. But I think that the communication is going to be key for us to get through this together. So, Marty, your hand is up again. No, I just didn't lower it from before. Okay. Did anybody else have a comment to make? I can't. Oh, Elaine, I think I see your hand. Hold on, Elaine, I gotta unmute you.
I think I'm unmuted. Yeah, Maria, I trust me, I understand your frustration. As Lainey just said, in healthcare, it's a nightmare from day to day what you can do. And for businesses who decided to take the PPP loans, since the day they handed you the money, they've changed the ground rules 5 times. No less than 5 times. So people made decisions based on the first set of rules, and then they changed the rules, and then they came out with a loan forgiveness form, which they continue to change. So I'm sure you are frustrated. We understand that, and trust me, the rest of us are feeling it too. The government is rushing into these programs, but they're not really explaining. And my fear is that as Lainey mentioned, they may run out of money or they may decide to allocate it based on some arbitrary decisions that the state will decide that Trumbull doesn't need it. The fact that we spent it doesn't matter. They won't care. That's my biggest worry. While we can apply for all these grants and all this reimbursement, FEMA may apply it uniformly, even if it's a crazy set of rules, but I don't trust the state the same way they apply our ECS funds on a whim every year. I'm afraid they're going to apply these the same way.
Yeah, Christine, do you have your hand up? Hang on, you're mute. I'm unmuting you. Hang on, maybe. Christine, can you unmute? Uh-oh.
There she is.
Better?
There you are. Hi, Stella.
Can you say hi? The one thing that I think is going to be useful to keep talking about is, and I know it's going to be really, really hard for the administration and the board working together to kind of forecast this, but you know, with respect to the number of parents that might decide to opt out of the hybrid and work entirely from home and decide in doing so, they want to go ask for a Chromebook and the expansion of that program. So I think it'd be interesting to, as you know, I remember hearing Christina, the technology director, talking in the Zoom about 1,500 new Chromebooks just arriving and getting set up to get ready to be used. And you know, third graders are now going to have access to one immediately that wasn't part of the program before. So I think that's going to be an enormous thing that I'm just very curious about. And I know there's no means testing for it in a similar way that lunch, there was no means testing. So for instance, when my family did distance learning for the spring for my 2 first graders at the time, you just saw one of them a moment ago, I bought a personal Chromebook and they both shared the same one. But this year I might say as a parent, that's not really useful. Maybe I'll go buy my own, or maybe I'll ask the district for it. So that's just one thing that I think it's going to be a big moving target and really difficult for you guys to all get a handle on, but I'd be curious as to how you're forecasting for that. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm not sure we can actually answer those kind of questions tonight. I think those are the.
Oh, no, not at all. Not tonight. I'm just saying that it's just one of the things that as we think about going forward and having these continual
touch bases, which you were, I think we're suggesting monthly, like seeing how the shift might be changing or what the trends are, and how they're keeping the pulse of those trends, I think will be interesting and helpful and useful.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything to add? I don't know if I can see everybody on the screen. I just want to say, Peg, thank you so much for helping to clarify those numbers. I'm sorry that the email didn't get distributed to the board ahead of time. I think when they see the schedule, as you explained it to us, to Marty and I, prior to the meeting, that it'll be much clearer to them how it was set up. We know that this is a really trying time, and the information was very helpful for us to be able to see that and be prepared. To our Board of Ed members who are on the call tonight, I want to say thank you for joining us. And I really hope, I wish everybody luck. I know that it's challenging and it's changing day by day. And I know that you guys are working hard to make sure that our kids are back in school the appropriate way and the safest way, and that you're taking care of our staff as well. Does anybody have anything else that they wish to add before we move on to year to date?
Thank you, Lainey.
Okay, Maria, let's go to the fun stuff. Let's talk about our year to date.
Well, it's early in the year, so, you know, we're not going to see too many changes right now, but so you'll see some of the overtime accounts are probably over budget because of COVID. A lot of the departments needed to bring in staff, part-time people to cover. So you'll see some of that. Are there any specific accounts you want to look at? Because I could go through, but some of these that I looked at are actually reclassifications. I noticed that, for example, there was a retirement during the year, but the final payout for vacation, accrued vacation and sick was applied to this year because it was paid this year, but it's going to be reversed to last year. Those kinds of things I noticed. So unless anybody has any specific questions, I don't see any issues that I need to bring up right now.
Was there anything that we have any estimate of what storm cleanup's going to cost us?
No, not at this time.
Okay.
We are
Elaine?
keeping track of that separately as well. Hopefully
Okay.
there's funding for that. If you look at page 8, you will see there's a $30,000 overage, and that's due to COVID. That's the emergency services. So we submitted $366,000 for reimbursement. As I said before, we continue on accumulating costs, and we'll be requesting reimbursement in September and then December.
Okay. Elaine, you have your hand up?
Yeah, just a quick question, Maria. When will we see the final transfers for the year that we closed in June?
September,
In
hopefully
September?
next month, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I doubt at that time we'll have the information regarding the reimbursement from FEMA or the state. At that point, I probably won't have that. But I probably will have an indication where they're going with the eligibility.
Will you, when you show us the final year, show the over expenses, and then if we get reimbursed, when you do say a fund balance, if we run over on something that you expect to be reimbursed because of COVID from April or May, will you show the income in the next year, or will you hold it out to clearing up the prior
We
year?
actually spoke with the auditors regarding this. It would have to be received by the end of August, and or at least guarantee that would be received shortly.
Okay.
Otherwise, it will be shown in next year's budget, next
Okay.
year's expenditures.
So we're
Or, I'm
likely to
sorry,
show,
next year's revenue.
over expenditure in the 1920 year, but the revenues will come in the 2021.
Correct, most
Okay.
likely.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Maria, just to piggyback on our earlier discussion, if we can take a look at the year-to-date for revenues at the quarter.
Yep.
I think that will satisfy the request during budget season. Any other questions concerning year-to-date? Then we'll move on to approval of the minutes from the last meeting. They're attached to your packet. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes? Paul, I see Paul's lips moving, but he's muted, so hang on a second. Paul, nod your head.
I will make that motion.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
You have it.
Mr. Barker, thank you. So the motion is to accept the minutes of the, let me make sure I got the date right. July 9th, 2020 Board of Finance minutes. Is there any discussion, changes? Everybody's okay with them?
Laney, there were two sets of minutes. This is Marty. There
Yeah.
were two sets of minutes in here. Which one are we approving first?
Well, let's do the July 9th one, since that's the one I opened to first in the packet. That's double.
Yes, July 9th.
July 9th, and then we'll go back to the June 8th. Phyllis is shaking her head at me. Phyllis, am I doing something wrong?
I don't think it's June 8th. I think it was May 14th.
Yeah, May 14th is the other day.
Approved June 8th.
Right, the minutes from July note that we approved the June minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking in the wrong spot. Gee, and I thought I was pretty prepared tonight. Oh, well.
You're doing great, Madam Chairman.
Is it Friday yet? Okay, so let's start with
July 9th.
the Board of Finance minutes for the May 14th, 2020.
Move their approval.
And Michael, you're seconding? Thank you. Anybody see any changes with the first set of minutes? Okay. Since there are no changes, I don't see any hands raised. All in favor of accepting the minutes as if you could raise your hands, I can see you all on the screen now. 6. That's unanimous. No abstentions, no. Okay, we're good, Phyllis, 6-0.
July 9th.
And then moving on to the next set of minutes,
And then April for July 9th.
the minutes for July 9th. Did anybody see any changes? Okay, I don't see any hands raised. So all in favor, signify by raising your hand. Okay, that's 6 yeses, so there can't be any no's or abstentions. So 6-0, that motion passes. All right. Does anybody else have anything else they wish to discuss before we take a motion to adjourn this evening? All right. Paul, you want to make the motion to adjourn?
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Michael's going to second. All in favor?
Aye.
Signify by waving good night.
Good night.
All right. Thanks, everybody.